Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. Today we're looking at something a little different.
Yeah.
So we're going to be checking out this allegorical text called the seventh word.
Okay.
The seventh word is all about faith and trust and finding peace
Right.
in difficult times.
Yeah, and what's so cool about this text is that even though it's rooted in Islamic thought, the wisdom in it is really universal.
I see.
You know, it's about finding meaning and resilience in a world that can be pretty challenging for all of us.
For sure.
Yeah.
So the seventh word opens with this really powerful image of a wounded soldier on a battlefield.
Okay.
He's facing a lion.
Oh, wow.
There are gallows nearby,
Gallows.
and he's thousands of miles away from home.
So not exactly a good situation.
Not a relaxing vacation now.
No, not at all. It's a pretty desperate situation. And then just when things seem hopeless, this wise person shows up and offers the soldier 2 talismans,
Okay.
2 medicines, and a ticket.
A ticket. That's interesting. What do you think that means?
Well, let's hold on to that thought for a second.
Yeah.
Because right after the soldier gets these gifts, 2 very different figures approach him.
Okay.
One is this deceitful tempter full of charm, trying to entice the soldier with pleasure.
Oh, yeah, I know that guy.
Yeah.
Always promising a good time.
Exactly.
But you end up with a headache the next morning.
Exactly. He represents all those distractions and temptations that pull us away from what really matters.
Makes sense.
And then there's this other voice, a voice of truth, urging the soldier to resist those temptations and use the things he was given. This voice represents faith and guidance.
So it's like a fork in the road. One path leads to distractions and the other to something more meaningful.
Precisely. And the text actually uses dialogue to show us how these 2 voices appeal to the soul. So the tempter says, "Hey, friend, come, let's enjoy ourselves together. Let's look at these beautiful scenes. Let's listen to these pleasant songs. Let's eat these delicious foods."
That does sound pretty tempting. Especially when you're, on a battlefield facing a lion and gallows.
Right.
I think I might go for the delicious food too.
But you got to remember, those are just temporary distractions.
Yeah.
The voice of truth offers a totally different perspective.
Okay.
It says, "Don't be deceived. If you have any courage, kill the lion behind you, resist the gallows before you, and heal your wounds. If you have any valor, go ahead, show us. Otherwise, like everyone else, you too will die."
Wow. That's a stark contrast.
Yeah,
One offers escape and the other calls for courage and resilience.
exactly. And to really get this, we need to understand what all this symbolism means.
I see.
For example, the lion represents death, something we all have to face eventually.
Right. But it doesn't seem like the text is portraying death in a bad light.
Right.
It's talking about it as a passage to paradise, a reunion with loved ones.
Exactly. And that shift in perspective is key.
Okay.
The allegory is showing us that faith can change how we understand even the toughest experiences.
So how do the talismans and medicines fit into all of this?
Well, the talismans represent faith in Allah, and the medicines represent trust in Allah and patience. The text argues that because of faith, death isn't something to be afraid of, but a transition to something greater.
So it's about surrendering to a power bigger than ourselves.
Yes, and finding comfort in that surrender.
Okay.
The text uses the phrase, "Indeed, we belong to Allah, and indeed to Him we will return," to express that.
That phrase really speaks to me. It really captures a sense of humility and acceptance.
Yeah, and that acceptance is where patience, that second medicine, comes in. If we trust in a higher plan, we can find the strength to handle even the most difficult situations.
It's like that saying, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Absolutely. It's about finding that balance between taking responsibility for our actions and accepting what's out of our control.
Yeah.
And this brings us back to that ticket that the soldier gets.
Oh, right.
What does that symbolize?
Curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Now, I think it can be interpreted as a guide to navigate this journey of life and get to that ultimate destination.
Okay.
And specifically, it's linked to the 5 daily prayers and staying away from major sins.
So the ticket represents the practical steps we can take to stay on course amidst all the temptations.
Exactly. It's about living by our values and seeking guidance from something beyond ourselves.
This makes me think about sacred texts like the Quran.
Yeah.
How does the seventh word view that source of knowledge and guidance?
Well, it contrasts divine guidance with the limits of just regular knowledge. It elevates the Quran as the true guide in this whole allegorical journey.
Okay.
It emphasizes its message of truth, guidance, and illumination.
That's a powerful image.
Yeah.
It's like the Quran is this compass that helps us navigate the rough seas of life.
And it suggests that true wisdom doesn't just come from books or intellectual pursuits.
Right.
It comes from connecting with a source of knowledge that goes beyond our limited human understanding.
So it's not just about reading the words. It's about really living by those teachings.
Exactly. It's about living a life with a higher purpose.
This is giving me a lot to think about. I can already see how this allegory can be applied to my own life, even if I'm not literally facing a lion or gallows.
That's the great thing about these stories.
Yeah.
They speak to everyone regardless of our own circumstances.
Before we get too deep into applying these ideas,
Yeah.
I want to go back to the dialogue between the soldier and those two voices.
Okay.
Seems like there's a lot more to uncover there.
Absolutely. Those snippets give us some amazing insights into temptation and the importance of choosing faith and resilience.
Okay, well, let's dive into that next time.
Sounds good. You know, it's interesting how the tempter doesn't use force or threats in this story. He uses seduction, appealing to the soldier's desires for pleasure and comfort.
It's almost sneakier that way.
Yeah.
Like he's tricking the soldier into a trap with promises of ease and enjoyment.
Exactly. And that's how temptation often works in our lives, too.
Yeah.
It's not usually about some big evil, but more like those little indulgences that distract us from what's important.
Oh, absolutely. Like when you should be working on something important, but you find yourself scrolling through social media instead.
Right.
Or staying up late to binge watch a show when you have an early morning meeting.
Perfect examples. In those moments, it's easy to lose sight of the big picture and just go for instant gratification.
So how can we resist those temptations? What's the alternative that the voice of truth offers?
Well, the voice of truth reminds the soldier of his real purpose, his ultimate goal.
Okay.
It says, "Don't you have a home far away from here? You are going to an eternal realm of happiness, a realm of infinite beauty. Don't you have a beloved one who is waiting for you there with longing?"
It's like a wake-up call, reminding the soldier that there's something way more important than those temporary pleasures.
It's about shifting our focus from the temporary to the eternal, from material things to spiritual things.
And this is where the idea of paradise gets really interesting.
Right.
It's not just some abstract concept. It's described as a real place with infinite beauty and happiness.
Yeah, in Islamic belief, paradise is the ultimate reward for those who live a good life. A place of never-ending bliss and being reunited with loved ones.
It makes you think, what would it take to really believe in that kind of reward?
Yeah.
To actually let it guide your choices in this life?
That's a great question. I think that's one of the challenges the allegory is posing to us. It's asking us to consider the possibility of a reality beyond what we can immediately see.
Right.
And to let that belief influence our actions.
So it's not just about blind faith. It's about letting that faith shape our choices, our priorities, how we live in the world.
Exactly. And that's where submitting to divine will is so important.
What does that mean exactly?
It's not about just accepting anything that happens. It's about aligning ourselves with a higher power and trusting in a plan that's bigger than what we can understand on our own.
That sounds very different from what we're often taught in today's world.
Yeah.
You know, about individual achievement and controlling our own destiny.
It is a different way of thinking. But I think there's a lot of wisdom in recognizing that we're not the only ones writing our stories.
I see what you mean. And there's a certain freedom that comes with surrendering to a higher power.
Right.
A sense of peace that we can't get just from striving and relying only on ourselves.
That's it. And that brings us back to those two medicines, trust in Allah and patience. If we can develop those qualities, we can face life's challenges with a different kind of strength.
So instead of freaking out or giving in to despair when things get tough,
Right.
we can tap into a deeper resilience and find comfort knowing that we're not alone.
Exactly. And this connects to the idea that gratitude and contentment are like a second medicine.
Okay.
The text compares life's journey to being invited to this huge feast in paradise.
That's a great analogy. If we keep that ultimate destination in mind, even the difficult parts of the journey become easier to deal with.
And it makes us appreciate the good things we have, even when things are tough.
It's about shifting our focus from what we don't have to what we do have.
Yes. So it's not about pretending that suffering and hardship don't exist. It's about choosing to find meaning and purpose even in those hard times.
And that's where the ticket becomes important again.
Yeah.
It's about the things we can actually do to stay on the right path, even when we're tempted to go astray.
It's like having a compass and a map. The compass is our faith, showing us the way.
Right.
And the map is our spiritual practice, guiding us through all the ups and downs.
That's a really good way to put it.
Yeah.
And the text specifically mentions doing the 5 daily prayers as a key part of that spiritual practice.
Yes.
Now, I know that might seem specific to people who aren't familiar with Islam.
Sure.
Can you explain a bit more about the significance of those prayers?
Of course. So in Islam, the 5 daily prayers are considered one of the pillars of faith, a way to connect with Allah and express gratitude and submission.
So it's not just about saying the words. It's
right.
about being present and connecting.
Exactly. It's a time to step away from all the distractions and focus on something bigger than ourselves.
And I imagine those moments of quiet reflection can be really grounding.
Definitely. Especially in a world that's always demanding our attention.
Yeah, it's like pressing pause on all the craziness and finding some peace and quiet.
It's a basic human need.
Right.
And what's cool about this allegory is that it gives us a way to understand that need and find ways to meet it. And I think that message speaks to everyone, no matter their background or beliefs.
This is making me think about the prayer that appears at the end of the 7th word. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how it connects to everything we've been talking about.
I think the prayer really sums up the core of the allegory, highlighting how important it is to seek guidance and illumination from something bigger than us.
Okay, well, let's explore that prayer and its significance after a quick break. Okay, so we're back and ready to look at this really powerful prayer that ends the 7th word.
Yeah, it's a great way to wrap up all these ideas about faith and trust and surrender that we've been talking about.
Would you mind reading it for us so we can really take it in?
Sure, it says, O Allah, illuminate our hearts with the light of faith in the Quran. Indeed, Allah is self-sufficient through our need of Him, and we are not self-sufficient through being needless of Him. We disavow our own power and strength, and take refuge in your power and strength. Make us among those whom you are for, and do not leave us to ourselves. Protect us with your protection, and have mercy on us and all believing men and women, and bestow your peace and blessings upon our Master Muhammad.
Wow, there's so much in those lines. It's like a guide for dealing with life's challenges.
It really is. And one of the things that stands out to me is the focus on illumination. The prayer starts by asking to be illuminated by the light of faith in the Quran. It's like admitting that we need guidance, that we can't always see the way forward on our own.
Yeah, that really resonates with me. We all have those times when we feel lost and uncertain, like we're in the dark.
Exactly. And this prayer is reminding us that there's a source of light, a source of wisdom that we can turn to.
And it's interesting how it connects that light with the Quran.
Right.
It's suggesting that the Quran can be a source of guidance and insight.
Yeah. And for those who might not know, the Quran is God's word as revealed to the Prophet Muhammad.
So it's not just a historical text. It's a living source of wisdom that people use for inspiration and direction in their lives.
Exactly. And even if someone isn't Muslim, I think there's a universal message here about connecting with something bigger than ourselves.
Right.
It's about finding those things that help us understand the world and where we fit in.
And the prayer goes on to talk about how much we depend on Allah,
Right.
saying, indeed, Allah is self-sufficient through our need of Him, and we are not self-sufficient through being needless of Him.
It's a powerful statement. It's saying that real strength doesn't come from our ego or trying to do everything ourselves,
Yeah.
but from recognizing that we need something greater than us.
It's a humbling reminder that we're not the center of everything.
And I think there's a kind of freedom in that realization.
You know, it takes the pressure off of having to have all the answers and be perfect and control everything.
Absolutely. It lets us surrender to something bigger and find peace in that.
And then the prayer continues with, we disavow our own power and strength and take refuge in your power and strength.
Right. It's like saying, I can't do this alone, I need your help.
There's a real vulnerability in that.
And it goes back to the ideas of trust and faith that we've been exploring in this whole deep dive.
It's about letting go of that need to be in control.
Yeah, and trusting that there's a higher power working even when we can't see the whole plan.
And the prayer ends with a really beautiful request for protection and mercy. Make us among those whom you are for, and do not leave us to ourselves. Protect us with your protection, and have mercy on us and all believing men and women.
It's admitting that we all need help sometimes, that we all need support and guidance as we go through life.
And it reminds us that we're not alone in our struggles.
Yeah.
There's a sense of community and shared humanity in that.
And lastly, the prayer ends with a blessing for the Prophet Muhammad. And bestow your peace and blessings upon our Master Muhammad.
It's like a sign of respect and gratitude for the one who brought these teachings to the world.
Exactly. Recognizing where this wisdom comes from and expressing appreciation for the guidance it offers.
This has been such a fascinating and insightful look at the 7th word.
I agree.
I feel like I've learned so much.
Me too. I hope our listeners feel the same way.
One of the big takeaways for me is how much power faith has to change how we view our challenges.
Yep.
It's not about ignoring hardship, but about seeing it through a different lens.
It's about finding meaning and purpose even when things are tough. And that's where trust, surrender, and relying on something bigger becomes so crucial.
And that prayer we just looked at really captures those ideas perfectly.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that we don't have to fight life's battles by ourselves. There's always a source of strength and guidance we can turn to.
It's about knowing we're part of something bigger and finding comfort in that.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave everyone with one final thought.
Okay.
If you're facing your own lion or gallows, remember what we learned from the seventh word. Remember those talismans of faith and trust.
Yeah.
Use those medicines of patience and gratitude. And hold on to that ticket to a higher purpose by living according to your values.
And don't forget, you're not alone on this journey. That source of strength and guidance is always there for you.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep looking for those deeper truths that light the way.